Today's story comes from a woman we'll call Danielle, a pediatric physical therapist, married 7 years, mother to a 3-year-old girl with the most unusual hair. Her mother-in-law had been watching that hair for a long time. What she did next was meant to destroy a marriage. Instead, it destroyed a 40-year-old lie. This is what happened in the 14 days Danielle stayed silent.
My name is Danielle. My daughter Lily is 3 years old. She has red hair, bright, copper red, the kind that catches sunlight and turns into fire. Nobody in my family has red hair. Nobody in my husband's family has red hair either. For 3 years, that fact lived quietly in the corner of every family dinner. Pauses. My mother-in-law, Patricia, noticed it first. Of course she did. Patricia notices everything. She's the kind of woman who counts the silverware after every visit, who writes down the value of the wine you bring, who comments on your weight while she serves you cake. She has ruled the Atwood family for 34 years. My father-in-law, Warren, quiet man, tired eyes, has spent every one of those years agreeing with her. The first time Patricia commented on Lily's hair, my daughter was 6 months old. There's no red in the Atwood line, none at all. She said it lightly. The way she says everything that hurts the most. I let it go. Mark, my husband, let it go. But Patricia didn't. For 3 years the comments came, once a month at first, then every visit, then every phone call. You know, my friend Susan's daughter had a baby that looked nothing like the father. Mark, do you remember anyone with red hair on your mother's side? No? Interesting. Danielle, sweetheart, who in your family has red hair? No one? How unusual. Sighs. Mark kept telling me to ignore her. She's old, Danny. She's been like this her whole life. So I ignored her. For 3 years. Then, 2 weeks ago, my office phone rang at 2:47 in the afternoon. A man's voice. Calm, professional, lab technician. Mrs. Atwood, this is Geneva Labs. We received a buccal swab submitted under your daughter Lily Atwood's name. Our protocol requires consent from both legal guardians before we run a paternity test on a minor. We need you to verify this submission. The room went very quiet. I said, I never submitted a sample. He said, the form was signed by a Patricia Atwood, listed as grandmother. She wrote that you and your husband had given verbal consent. Pauses. I sat in my office for a long time after that call. I didn't cry. I didn't call Mark. I didn't call Patricia. I opened a fresh page in my work notebook, the one I used to track patient sessions, and I wrote one line at the top. Day 1. Then I started taking notes. By the end of that first day, I knew 3 things. 1. Patricia had stolen something from my daughter. A drinking cup, probably, from Sunday dinner the week before. She'd taken it home, swabbed it, sent it to a lab. 2. She was confident enough in this plan that she had forged my consent, which meant she expected the results to expose me as an unfaithful wife. 3. She had no idea the lab would call me, so she was still planning, still waiting for the envelope to arrive at her house, still building the moment when she would publicly destroy me in front of the entire family. I had time. And for the first time in 3 years of swallowed comments, I had information. Pauses. I didn't tell Mark. I know how that sounds. But hear me out. Mark is a good husband. He loves Lily more than his own life. But Mark has spent 34 years learning to manage his mother, to smooth things over, to avoid confrontation. If I told him, he would call Patricia. They would have a hard conversation. She would cry. He would feel guilty. And nothing would actually change. I needed Patricia to step into her own trap. With witnesses. So I stayed quiet. I called a family attorney the next morning. Quietly. From my office. I called Geneva Labs back and confirmed I did not consent. They flagged the original test. I requested a separate, legitimate test with my full consent. Mark's hair sample I collected from his pillow, my own swab, Lily's swab. I paid out of pocket. Cash. No paper trail with Mark. And then I did something Patricia never expected. I logged into the Ancestry website Patricia herself had bullied us all into using 2 Christmases ago. Just for fun, dear. Just to see who we are. Patricia had uploaded her own DNA, so had Warren, so had Mark. I uploaded a sample of Lily's, and there, in the DNA relatives section, between Mark's cousins and second cousins, was a match Patricia had not anticipated. A man named James Holloway, age 36, listed as half-uncle to Lily, half-uncle, which meant he was Mark's half-brother. A half-brother Mark had never been told existed. I sat in front of my laptop and stared at that name for almost an hour. James Holloway, Hartford, Connecticut. A construction foreman with a wife and 2 kids. Born March 1989. Patricia married Warren in October 1989, 7 months after James was born. Size. The math wasn't hard. I messaged James through the platform. Carefully. I didn't mention Patricia by name. Hello. I think we may share family. My daughter shows you as a half-uncle in her DNA results. Would you be open to a phone call? He responded within an hour. James knew everything. He'd been adopted at birth. His adoptive parents had told him when he was 18. He'd searched for years. He'd found his biological mother through Ancestry 6 months earlier. Her name was Patricia Atwood. She had refused to meet him, refused to tell anyone, begged him to stay invisible. James told me she'd given birth to him in a Catholic home for unwed mothers in 1989. The father was a man named Danielle Holloway, a college boyfriend who died in a car accident before James was born. James had taken his biological father's last name when he turned 21. Patricia had married Warren 4 months after giving James up for adoption. She had never told Warren. Warren did not know he had been her second choice, did not know she had been pregnant when they met, did not know there was a son in Hartford with his nose and his jawline. For 34 years, the entire Atwood marriage had been built on a lie, and the woman who built it was about to publicly accuse me of building one too. Pauses. I waited. Day 3, Day 5, Day 8, Day 11. Patricia got chattier, sweeter, stopped commenting on Lily's hair, started bringing little gifts to our house, practically humming during phone calls. She thought she was about to win. On Day 12, my lab results came in. Mark was Lily's biological father at 99.9998%. The other 0.0002% is statistical noise. I printed the results, put them in a sealed envelope. I also printed the Ancestry results, showing the half-uncle match. James had given me written permission to use his name. I put that in a separate sealed envelope. On Day 13, Patricia called me, sweet as honey, inviting us all to Sunday dinner. Just the immediate family, dear. Something special. Bring Lily's good shoes. I said, we'll be there. I packed both envelopes in my purse. Pauses. Sunday came. 11 people around the dining room table. Warren, Mark's sister Margot, Margot's husband and their 2 teenagers, Mark's uncle Bill, Mark's cousin Rebecca, Patricia at the head of the table. Patricia waited until dessert. Then she stood up, smoothed her dress, lifted a sealed envelope from beside her plate. Everyone, before we eat, I have something I need to share. Mark, sweetheart, I think you should be the one to open this. She slid the envelope across the table. Mark looked at me, confused. I gave him the slightest nod. He opened it. Patricia's voice was already rising, practicing the speech she'd rehearsed for 2 weeks. Mark, I'm so sorry. I had to know. As a mother, I had to know. The hair. The way she's never looked like you. I needed answers. For your sake. For the family's sake. Mark was still reading. His face changed. Slowly. From confusion to anger. From anger to something else entirely. Patricia kept talking. I know this is hard, but the truth always... Mark looked up. He said very quietly, Mom, this says Lily is mine. 99.9998% mine. Patricia froze. She said, That's not possible. The lab... They must have made a mistake. Let me see. I pulled out the second envelope. I slid it down the table. I said, Patricia, while you were testing my daughter, I tested something else. There's a name in there I think you'll recognize. She stared at the envelope. She didn't pick it up. Warren did. Pauses. I watched the color leave Warren's face 1 inch at a time. He read the name. He read the relationship. Half-uncle. Born March 1989, Hartford, Connecticut. He looked at Patricia. For 34 years of marriage, I had never seen Warren look at his wife the way he looked at her in that dining room. He said, Patty, who is James Holloway? Patricia opened her mouth. Nothing came out. For the first time in 3 years, the woman who notices everything had been seen. Pauses. The dinner didn't end. It evaporated. Margot was the first to speak. She said, Mom, there was always a photo missing from the album. I asked you about it once when I was 12. You said it was nothing. Mark stood up, walked around the table, took Lily out of her high chair, held her. He looked at his mother. He said, We're leaving. We didn't speak in the car. Lily fell asleep before we hit the highway. That night, after she was in bed, I told Mark everything. The lab call, the 14 days, the conversation with James, all of it. He sat at the kitchen table.
So what was Danielle's story really about? It wasn't about a DNA test, or even an affair. It was about a quiet truth most of us have lived but never named. The people who work hardest to expose your secrets are almost always the ones hiding the biggest ones of their own. Pauses. Psychologists call this projection. It's one of the oldest defense mechanisms we have. When we can't bear to look at something inside ourselves, we go searching for it in someone else, loudly, publicly, constantly. Patricia spent 3 years staring at a 3-year-old's red hair because she could not bear to look in a mirror. But here's what makes Danielle's story different. She didn't fight. She didn't accuse. She didn't beg her husband to choose between her and his mother. She did something most of us never learn how to do. She let her enemy keep building, watched the trap get bigger, took notes, and then stepped aside on the day it was meant to close on her. That's not revenge. That's clarity. The kind of clarity that takes years of being underestimated to develop. Pauses. Have you ever had someone in your life who couldn't stop accusing you of the exact thing they were doing? Tell me about it in the comments. I read everyone. And next week's story? A woman who found something in her late mother's safety deposit box that her sister had spent 20 years trying to forget existed. The contents made the family lawyer go pale. Subscribe so you don't miss it.